Hello there, Server from 17 once again. This is my Ninja Gaiden 3 Ultimate Ninja difficulty video walkthrough. This is day 6, and this is a encounter with a bunch of beret guys. So we know exactly what I'm going to be doing here. I'm going to be wind path into flying swallow, immediately into obliteration technique, until everybody's dead. And somebody's talking in the background in a Japanese voice, apparently. So that's the first sequence done. And then the next one coming up is one of the hardest in the game. And it's hard because there's a massive gauntlet of enemies, of these bikers, that are really difficult to lock onto because Ryu wants to lock onto everything but what you want him to. There's a whole bunch of the armoured guys who land planes. And then there's a group of alchemists at the end, just when you weren't weak enough. So it's one of those fights where... Oh, I tell a lie, sorry. On this difficulty, it's different. So instead of the plane landing guys, it's these things. Which actually makes this fight kind of easier. But the difficulty's still there because you're going to get shot at by a rocket launcher dude on a snowmobile. Those guys there. And they also try and run you down. And what you want to do, if you can, is what I just did then. Where you jump up and you blow them up with Ryu's bow. But as I've mentioned, there's no way to prioritize targets with the bow. There's no way to tell Ryu, I don't want you to shoot at the dirty fucking big long-nosed scrubbers with the spikes all over their pink bodies. I want you to shoot to the guy with the rocket launcher. So instead, you end up in these situations of sheer frustration and rage where you either get run over coming out of a flying swallow or an obliteration technique, or you're shooting the wrong things with the bow and you land and get comboed. And it happens a lot. And it's one of those bits where it's completely unacceptable. But it's another part of this game that never got tweaked or changed because it's a system that you can't really, enforce unless you have a good algorithm to do it. And the way I would do it is I would have a priority system that would be toggleable in the menu. Just an option that says bow priority, nearest target, most lethal target. And if anybody thinks that these little shits are more lethal than a bunch of gangbangers on a bike with a rocket launcher, they're mistaken. Especially in a blizzard in Antarctica, because that just adds to the bullshit. But as you can see, there's a lot of these enemies. That right there was an input fail on the game. There's no reason I would jump up in the air. I'm always holding a direction on my analog. Come on, Ninja Gaiden 3, keep up. So just wind path, flying swallow, OT. And be careful of the combos, because as soon as they start hitting you, if you're not blocking, you can take some serious damage off these enemies. And that right there was me charging the ultimate technique. It managed to kill 2 of the alchemists. Go on, there we go, obliteration technique, which is really useful. Now I need to swap to my claws once the game finishes loading. And I was going to edit all those out, but I wanted to keep them in just so all the people playing Razor's Edge can realise how fucking lucky they are. But you'll notice there's still people on bikes, and he keeps aiming at the alchemist. And this is a system right now where maybe the priority system wouldn't work, because I think the alchemists are probably more dangerous than the biker. So how do you get that system to function in the way you need it to? I think it should prioritize aerial enemies and fast moving enemies. That's how I think it should work. But as you can see, 4 alchemists maybe chasing me down, and a snowmobile bombing around who I still haven't taken out yet, I don't think. So you need patience now, because if you die you'll go back to the start of this fight, and that's 2.5 minutes worth of killing. So just isolate them, do this move that you see right here, get the kill, keep on building the Nimpo just in case you make any mistakes. If you want to go super safe, just spam the 360Y on the scythe. I didn't really like doing that against the alchemist because I used to mess it up. It was one of those things where when I really needed to do it, I screwed it up. I'd choke almost every time. So instead, I do recommend the claw technique. Isolate, conquer. And if you see them ever reaching into the ground like that, it means that you can get a free hit on them. So make sure to try and always capitalise on their openings. But this is an enemy that they completely ruined in Razor's Edge, because they made them even worse. There was a system of dealing with them on this game, because they were never fun to fight. But then on Razor's Edge there's a handful of moves that seem to work, but everything else, they block, they evade, they have auto block, auto evade on almost everything, and it's just not cool. And it either turns into the situation of do you spam UTs against them, or do you play as a female character that can deal with them better? Which, that should never be a strategy, you know. To deal with the bad guy, I have to play as a different person. Like, come on again. So be careful here, because you're about to get bummed. Dodge the giant cuddly bear guy. And then, this is a room with a very crowded fight. So you're going to be fighting a ton of these standard ninja dudes with the claws and the experimental weapon monster dudes. And after a certain amount of people have been killed, it's going to break the floor. And if you don't get up the wall when the floor breaks, you will die. So just be aware of this. But the problem that you'll face in this area is the camera, which has been a constant enemy throughout this game. But then again, the camera's an enemy on every Ninja Gaiden, so you can't just blame this one. But the scythe is really going to pay dividends here if you've got good with the on-landing 360Y. You know, you might be watching this thinking that I don't really want to fight that way, and I admire your courage, because this is just, wow. Like, trying to combo on a game where the enemies don't flinch or block everything, you know, it's like licking paint at some points. You know, you're never going to get that wall covered if you're just using your tongue. So, do what works. Like, I have none whatsoever, you know, reserves about cheesing any part of Ninja Gaiden 3. Like, Razor's Edge feels a lot less cheap, but there are still cheap moments in that. For instance, they've utilised these 3 bosses, which are essentially clones of a boss you fought on this game, but now you fight 3 of them at the same time, and they're kind of neutered down. And they're such a strange enemy because they've got a massive life bar, and it's a boss, it's 3 bosses that would normally not be there, and all they seem to do in that game is slow down the pace. And for a game that's supposed to be fast-paced, with this, you know, amazing loading screen on the swapping of menus, you'd think that that would be the first thing that was optimised. But that's what's funny about this game in particular. It's only the other weapons that the game has such a hard problem, you know, swapping to, because it was designed to have one sword at all time. Like, you go back to Ninja Gaiden 1, Ninja Gaiden 2, you can change weapons on them games, they don't take half as long as this. You know, there's no excuse at all, other than, what the fuck were they doing? You know, except for making sure that the cutscenes had jiggle physics on the tits, and, you know, making sure that there was so much emotion in Ryu's blank face. Just... He's so funny. I don't know, it'd be like Metal Gear Solid doing combat. You know, turning into nothing but a combat game. No cutscenes, no conversations, just straight up action. Nothing but combat action. And anybody who's been a Metal Gear Solid fan for quite a long time knows that those games, the weakest part of a Metal Gear is the combat. Because the controls have never been tight enough. And don't get me wrong, Metal Gear Solid 4 definitely changed that a lot. Metal Gear Solid 4 is as close to, you know, a top tier action game as it can be, because it functions correctly. It's moved away from the Japanese eccentricities and how things work, and it made it into a much more Western, you know, functional action game. But I think we can all agree the last thing that we want from a Metal Gear Solid game is for it to be completely about action, because the best parts of that game are not action based. You know, they are the stealth, they are the interesting boss fights, they are the quirkiness, the storyline, the cutscenes, the characters. And that's what that game has in spades, so to remove it is just madness. Which is why it's never happened. And then you have Ninja Gaiden, where the entire reason people are playing your game is because of the combat. It's tight, it's fluid, it's creative, it's fast, it's visceral, it's tough. And then you made your next game about the storyline and trying to humanize the main character, who the only thing people cared about the main character was that he looked badass, and B, he moved badass, and they had that magically in almost every title. Yet this game comes out and now we're seeing a much more human Ryu with, you know, deep vein thrombosis up one arm and just this fascination with slow walking and gritting his teeth and getting bloodshot eyes, and It's just such a joke. It really is. And I think they would have pulled it off if the story was actually good. But it's not. The story is appalling. The story is appalling for a whole bunch of reasons. And if that's going to be your main focus on the game, you've got to make it good. It can't just be Japanese bullshit, you know, interpretation of a Western military game. It can't be, because it's just not how it works. It's been done. Like, what happened to, you know, giant spider ninja guy stealing girl with big tits and trying to find her, and then realizing that giant spider guy was really trying to resurrect some giant nasty bastard from the past? What happened to those storylines? They worked. You didn't question them, you just accepted the fact that that girl ran around in the FBI with giant tits and somehow no lower back problems. Like, you took it on faith. And this game, like, oh, Ryu's gonna be a father to a girl he's just met. Like, saving the kids with the kids, he's down with the kids. Steel on bone. Like, it's just strange. And did you see that there? That was good. I just killed a bunch of alchemists and he said a fiend, because the normal difficulty in this moment is the first time you encounter those skinny looking dirty bastards that I don't know the name of. But this room here has got a really long fight. And it's a tough one because it's easy to get grabbed by the big cuddly Care Bear wankers, who I don't know the name of either. It's also a little bit of an endurance fight with an interesting checkpoint, because I can't quite remember where it was. What I do know is, though, there's a ton of these skinny pink dudes, a ton of those cuddly bear guys, and then they're going to chuck some Reapers at you. And the problem, of course, is not so much the Reapers, although they can do a lot of damage, but the 360 on landing Y is a destroyer of the Reapers, and you can generally finish them off. If you have a UT, you can save that for them if you do want to get rid of them quickly, or if you have a full Nimpo bar, you can use that and get rid of them quickly as well. It's really down to how you want to play, but just notice how often that big bug is trying to grab me. You know, it's one thing that I've never really understood about Ninja Gaiden games, why they make the enemies so grab happy. It doesn't make sense. You know, I don't mind the grabs killing you in one hit. I don't mind the grabs doing massive damage. I don't mind them being kind of unfair and fast and unblockable and all that stuff. But it bugs me when the AI is almost programmed to do nothing but that. And it's something that I really think, I'm hoping in the next generation, that we can get rid of. Like, Metal Gear Rising is a really good example of this. They made a piece of DLC where you played as Sam, one of the bosses in the game. And what they did was, they kind of recycled a bunch of bosses from the game, and you fight them as Sam, but they altered the regression of the AI. They also altered some of the movesets. And they took a last boss, which was already very challenging and quite cheap sometimes, and they gave him a move that was, you know, on paper might have sounded like a good idea, but in practice, it just broke the game. It was the cheapest, most bullshit thing I've come across in a long time, because the boss could do it at whim. He could do it up to like 5-7 times. Like, he could pull it out of a hat at any point, and he could spam it too. And this boss had 20 different unique moves that he could choose, but he always chose this one, and that's all he did for the full fight, and it just took all the fun out of that fight and turned it into this just terrible load of shit. And that's all because of the way that the AI worked, and Platinum are usually really good with their AI, and the DLC definitely struck me as being rushed, and perhaps not as finely tweaked as normally their games are. Or maybe it was intentional, just to make this, you know, this big FU boss, like, you know, just this roadblock of content. We've only made 3 hours of content, we've promised 5. He's 2 hours of bullshit against this guy. Like, I don't really know. But what I do know is, as technology advances, as, you know, this AI gets more sophisticated, I'm hoping that they program diversity into them and not just use it to implement smarter strategies, because I'm all for the enemies being smart, but I don't want them to be, you know, intrinsically cheap, because it kills the game for me at some points. Like Ninja Gaiden 2, which is a game I have never covered on my channel, and I probably never will. Ninja Gaiden 2 Sigma, there's a definite chance I'm going to cover that because I want to play it, and if I'm going to play it in this day and age, I'm going to capture it. But Ninja Gaiden 2 vanilla version on the Xbox 360. That's the one I've played. There's a boss called Alexei. He's this greater demon guy. He's kind of effeminate, lightning fellow with long nails. He looks a bit of a twat. And he is a twat. And the thing with this character is, every move he has, I'm fine with. Because I know how to dodge it, I know how it works. Don't get me wrong, he gets a little spammy with that tornado, electricity stuff when you start to kill him, which I'm not a fan of. He especially likes to counter Nimpo with it. But the thing that gets me on that boss every time is his grab. The guy grabs like a whore, man. The guy, it's ridiculous. You know, it's like you're wearing a money suit and he's poor. It's just unbelievable. And he does it all the time, and it's very fast, it's got a lot of range, it'll catch you even when you think you've evaded it, and it takes off half your life, or however much it takes off on your character. And that's all he fucking does, all the time. And there are some AI patterns when you fight Alexei where it's just chain grabs, and occasionally it works to your advantage because you can counter them. But if it doesn't, you know, you're dead. It's that simple. And there's a lot of bosses on that game that do have grabs. That are nowhere near as bullshit as he is. But he's AI. All it does is try to grab you. And I just don't get it. But thanks for watching anyhow, folks. I hope you're enjoying the series, and you take care now.